Yeah. And we've had businesses as large as $900 million as coaching clients, but at the end of the day, they just need the same foundations, and that's what we said.
And how do you and your coaches just get them some quick wins?
Right, so anything that you want to do, whether you want to lose 50 pounds or whether you want to buy your first multiplex, there's something that you can do right now to get the ball rolling.
What should people really be doing in the morning instead of these 2-hour long morning routines?
Right, they're perverse forms of procrastination when people are...
All right, so welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we have Craig Ballantyne. So Craig, thanks for making some time with us today. Craig is also known as the world's most disciplined man. He's a multiple author, public speaker, but most importantly, he's a coach and a mentor to the who's who around the world to help busy people get control of their calendar, get unstuck, and live a life that's truly reflective of their values and vision, a life that's more about health, family, and effortless business results. So I heard about Craig almost 3 years ago. I looked him up. I tripped into one of your online funnels, which you have great ads, by the way. Bought one of your products, and then I've had you on my inner circle here for the past couple of years as someone who can help me skip levels and build things that I've never done before, but you have. So I'm going to call you a life and business optimization expert.
Nice.
And life is really meant to be lived and not dragged through this experience where most people don't know where they're going and they really don't want the path that they're on to get there. So I first of all wanted to thank you for the tangible difference you've made in my life.
Oh, thank you.
As well as the lives of my students. Your book, The Perfect Week Formula, is actually mandatory reading for all my students who work with us in our program here at Infinite Results. So I'm super excited for our time together here on the podcast. I know time is valuable, so let's jump right in here, Craig. The first question here, I'm going to start with a zinger. So even before we get into your backstory and everything, which we will get to, morning routines are BS. They're a form of intentional procrastination. People weren't really talking about this much before smartphones and things like that, which is really just rob your focus. So what should people really be doing in the morning instead of these 2-hour long morning routines?
Right. They're perverse forms of procrastination when people are spending their best energy, their best time of the day. They have the greatest discipline, willpower, and intention first thing in the morning. And if you're spending it on anything else other than something that's very important to you, you're really robbing yourself of your own time. And it's giving away time to things that don't matter. So what we teach people is to identify what a really important activity is that will move you ahead, mostly in business, and do that as soon as possible, first thing in the morning, because again, you have the greatest discipline, willpower, and intention first thing in the morning. And then, everybody knows that life just gets more difficult as the day goes on because, the kids, you got 4 kids, right?
I do.
One of them's gonna get sick almost every single day of the week. And then you've got team members or you've got business partners, or if you're an employee of a company, your team members that you work with are going to bring you an emergency, and it just is more difficult as the day goes on to do that thing. And the next thing you know, you wake up the next morning, it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing yesterday's to-do list.
Yes, and sometimes people literally need to book themselves a hotel room and just get away into a different environment, because I know when I'm on a retreat, I'm actually at your mastermind right now, it's like, I wake up in the morning, there are no kids, there's nothing. I'm not saying avoid your family or kids, but sometimes set up your environment so that you can actually get that habit instilled and you're just used to like, okay, I'm waking up, focusing on the hardest thing, which actually is the hardest thing. It's dang hard, but you got to focus on it.
I know a guy, an author, and he booked a flight to Japan and back only to work on the plane.
Because different time change?
No, just because no one was going to bother him on the plane.
Oh, okay.
And he knows that he works well on planes. And so he sat in the metal tube, flew to Japan, maybe spent a night or two there and flew back and just had intense focused work sessions. And I know that sounds super insane, but anybody who has traveled for work, you realize you probably get more done. You have bigger ideas when you're outside of that work environment and, on just staring out the window, you have time to take all the inputs that you get from great podcasts like Corey's and all the books that you've read to finally connect all the dots and come up with an output. And actually, I talk about this a lot and tell people to do what are called white space walks, which are 90-minute walks in nature every week with your brain actually having white space, no more inputs, no podcasts, no audiobooks, nothing going in. And you take everything you've learned over the week and you think about your biggest problems and you solve those problems or take advantage of the opportunities. And when you're done that walk, you're like, wow, that was like maybe the most productive 90 minutes of my week because it wasn't reactive work sitting at your desk. Stuff like that is really helpful.
Super important. Awesome. Well, let's back up a little bit. You've been an entrepreneur, walking this entrepreneurship path for almost 25 years now, but take us back in time. Tell us a little bit about, quickly what it was like growing up And why were you interested in health and fitness space? Because that's really where you cut your teeth in business. Was it having anti-role models in your life, unhealthy people, or were friends diving deep into this, into working out, et cetera, et cetera? So, take us back in time a little bit.
Right. So
small time.
Yeah. So I grew up in Stratford, Ontario, and when you're in Stratford, Ontario, or most small towns in Canada, as you grow up, you drink beer and play hockey, or you play hockey and then drink beer. It doesn't matter which order you do it in. And so I just really wanted to be a hockey player, but I was not good enough to be a hockey player. And so I thought, well, how can I get into the National Hockey League? And at that time, teams were starting to have strength coaches. So this is the late 90s, and I went to university. In high school, I had this idea I was going to be a strength coach. I was never one of those people who was running lemonade stands at like age 6. I didn't really have the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes.
And I wanted to be a strength coach in the NHL. So I went and I got a kinesiology degree at McMaster University. I got a master's degree because the strength coaches that I studied, I'd go to the team's website and I'd find the strength coach and he would have a master's degree in exercise science. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to follow the path that's been laid out. And then I eventually realized my personality is not I get energized by being in a room of other people. I actually get drained by that. And so when I became a personal trainer, which was one of the steps to becoming the strength coach, I was fatigued at the end of the day of training people all the time. But I was energized in the mornings when I was writing articles for Men's Health magazine, which I got fortunate enough to write for early in my career, when I was still a graduate student. And then, when I was 25 years old, I sent an article to the editor, the fitness editor, and he put it in the magazine. Like, that's not going to happen for anybody else ever again, except for me. And so at age 25, when I was still the graduate student, the internet, it's really, I'm coming of age as the internet's coming of age, and I see these websites out there with information on them. And so I just went down that path, and I didn't know exactly where it was going to lead to. And then Men's Health magazine, this is back when they paid people. Now, because magazines have no subscribers, they don't pay you, but they paid me to write articles. They paid me to be on their forums. And then people started contacting me and say, hey, would you write a program for me? So after doing that and realizing I was spending an hour at night writing the same program, essentially, because it was all limited equipment, busy people, I was like, why don't I just create like a quote unquote a book or a manual and sell that? And so I sold my first product online January 28th, 2001. It was a Word document that I sold through PayPal. So I cobbled everything together. And then I came up with some names for the programs, and I got some email software, and I started building an email list. And almost for the next 15 years, my life was dedicated to growing my email list and selling them ebooks, workout programs, books, and then eventually online videos and some DVDs, because we were around in like 2010. But it was mostly just selling these information products. And it was the greatest ride ever, because I was making great money, and
the internet was dry.
And I was just sitting at home in my shorts and t-shirts writing stuff on the internet. It was so great. It allowed a lot of freedom in my life, and I didn't have I did a lot of manual labor jobs when I was still, I grew up on a farm, and I got a job when I was 12 for $2.85 an hour digging ditches. And so this is like hitting the jackpot lottery, being able to sell online. So that was my first experience. And then I switched over into the coaching and personal development and productivity side of things, and wrote books and started doing seminars, and made my life a little bit more complicated and harder, but it's much more worthwhile what I do now.
I was going to ask you what your first business break was, but it sounds like it's right there. But this just didn't happen overnight. This kind of was a build-up over maybe 2-3 years. You were growing an email list.
Absolutely. I didn't know what I was doing at first, and so I was a personal trainer, and I was making money kind of like a contractor doing things, and I was getting some clients on my own, but I wasn't really a business person in like 1998 and 1999. But that's when I started my email list. And I didn't make an online sale for another 2 years after that. So it was a lot of creating content, building the email list, but I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know how to sell something. I didn't know how to even set up a web page that would allow me to do that until years later.
And there wasn't a lot of people trying to do what you're doing. So
no,
you're kind of like figuring it out as you go.
And I was kind of stubborn, and didn't really look for teaching on that. I was just more enjoying the technical part of stuff, writing about the workouts. But I knew that I liked to write, and I was figured, maybe it'll just lead to some books or something. But eventually all these other opportunities showed up. And then, in 2007, YouTube came along and I got into video early. And that was the way that really allowed me to do that. Now, the biggest break was that Men's Health magazine, because what it allowed me to have was what I call critical credibility. Very much like, you've been quoted in places, you've been on stage all over the place. The more often that happens for Corey, the more credibility he gets, because like, man, I've seen this guy everywhere. I mean, he's legit. For a long time, I would get a lot of criticism and questions from people like, are you a real person? I got called, I had this one person who got angry at me and said, you're probably just like sitting on the beach with some bimbo. You're not even a real person. I'm like, this is such a bizarre message to get. But I didn't have, I did have some credibility, but I wasn't on TV or anything like that. And so it's easier now there's so much more video and stuff compared to like 2004. But
yes.
So there's doubts about who I was and that sort of stuff. So you have all this sort of skepticism that you have to overcome. But writing for Men's Health, really what it did for me the most, Corey, was that my peers in the industry saw my name and said, oh, this guy is to be trusted. And so therefore they would recommend me to their audiences, which made it much easier for me to get connected with people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if there wasn't things like YouTube and things like that back then that was actually one of the main credibility formats. Get published, get into some sort of writing, magazine article, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and then the next thing was podcasts. I even had a podcast in 2007 in the fitness space. And then YouTube was 2007 with the flip cams. And I've been on YouTube ever since, but now there's no way you can't show that you're a real person. So that's something that can be overcome pretty quickly.
Yes. And then so going from the health and fitness space to more the business space, because you coach also a lot of, I'm a business person, I'm a real estate investor and have a real estate coaching company. Was there a transition over time where you're like, you know what? Most of these people also have other businesses, or they have a life outside of business or a life outside of health and fitness. Like, when did you start transitioning over more to?
So it was a 9-year transition. So in 2006, that was like one of my best years in business, and people started asking me, well, how do you do this? And I had joined a coaching program where, this guy named Yannick Silver, he coached all types of entrepreneurs how to grow online businesses. And we were sitting around and he said, well, listen, why don't you have a seminar where you teach fitness experts how to build an online business? So I had a seminar in 2007. There was 53 people at it. And it was back when you could charge great money for a seminar. So they paid $2,500 to $3,500 to be in the room.
Wow.
53 people. And I sold 12 of them into a mastermind group. And that was the first foray into coaching that I had. And then I did some partnership coaching and stuff like that. But what people really came to me for was two things back then. One, if they were a personal trainer, they wanted to know how to build the online business. And then two, other entrepreneurs who were not in the fitness space just saw how much I got done. So earlier you mentioned in the intro, like world's most disciplined man. Like, some of my friends jokingly called me that because they saw me like, hey, you run this fitness business. And then at that time in 2011, I had bought another business in the personal development space. And they're like, you just crank out so much content. You're so productive. You must be so disciplined. And they knew that I went to bed early and got up early and was in shape and all that sort of stuff. So that label kind of stuck. But then it just allowed, like, hey, we had one client who had a plumbing company with like 40 plumbers. He's not an online fitness business. He didn't do hardly any online marketing, but he wanted to know like what were the systems and structures that I had in place to run my personal life and my business life in the way that I did. And that grew. And then I wrote this book called The Perfect Day Formula in 2015 and released it at the end of that year. It became really popular in 2016. And then I wrote subsequent books after that, including The Perfect Week Formula, which is actually the best of the books of all that I've written, because all the mistakes that I made with Perfect Day Formula, all the questions left unanswered, got answered in that book. And then now we're attracting people. We have home renovation people here today. We have driving school instructors. We have accountants. We have lawyers, lobbyists. Oh man, we have all types of things here. Construction people. I could go on and on and on, but because at the end of the day, what I'm teaching is just your personal systems, your personal discipline, and how that applies to running your teams and your structure and your schedules in your business. Doesn't matter what you do.
Yes.
Butcher, baker, candlestick maker, everybody needs those systems in place. And so that's how it's expanded to where we are now.
Excellent. No, there's certain there's certain things, principles and fundamentals that you need, and productivity and discipline and strong habits are just so important if you want to have a successful life, like a life worth living. Looking back on, going like, wow, I accomplished a lot. It's not the length of your life, but it's also what you do with your life for sure.
Yeah, the life in your years for sure. And it's also in the business is there needs to be systems for communicating with your team and communicating your meetings and setting up your marketing and strategies. Now, you're going to be a much better coach of how to find leads and do sales in real estate than I ever am, but we can have those basic systems in place that we can teach to any small business owner. And we've had businesses as large as $900 million as coaching clients, but at the end of the day, they just need the same foundations, and that's what we said.
That's right. Your specific industry is more like your nuts and bolts, but then it's like the foundation. It's
Absolutely.
The foundation is great, but you can't. There's more to just the foundation. You can pour a foundation of a house, and it's a great start. You can build a lot on that, but would you actually want to live there? No, you need some extra things. You need walls and windows and roofs and things like that too,
Absolutely.
Right? So the one thing I like about your program here, Craig, is that you guys really want to find quick wins for people, because I think, but I know momentum is very important when you're wanting to get ahead in life. So any advice to people out there, like what are some of the common trends of people getting stuck and struggling, what you call struggling?
Yeah.
And then how do you and your coaches just get them some quick wins? Maybe we can give some people some tangible things just listening to this podcast here today, go implement and start doing in their lives.
Right. So anything that you want to do, whether you want to lose 50 pounds or whether you want to buy your first multiplex or anything in between, write a book, etc. These projects just look so massive when you look at them from afar. But there's something that you can do right now to get the ball rolling. And in most cases, it's contacting somebody, connecting somebody, asking somebody for some advice. And you can do that immediately. And when you do that immediately, it does give you that momentum and motivation. So you feel like, oh, okay, I've done something, let's keep it going.
Yes.
And that's, now, of course, you have to start getting into some bigger, more difficult work, but let's get the quick, easy wins right now. It's the same thing that we would do for our kids, whether they're wanting to improve a habit or do some schoolwork. And it's the same as when you don't want to do a workout. If you just go and do hey, just go and give me 5 minutes, the next thing you know, you have a good workout because you go through the rest of it. So you have to figure out what can you do right now to get a win, and not make things so complex that you're just scared out of taking action.
Now, even though you're not a real estate investor, Craig, or not every day like me, but the one thing I do see that you invest in is you invest in businesses, you invest in people, you invest in like intellectual property. So like when you have an opportunity to maybe buy into a business or, how do you analyze it? Like, cause you're obviously looking for a return, a long-time return. And, I saw your contact list, right? Like you invest in relationships, and it's a real thing. And people may think that they have to be like a social butterfly or like have the gift to gab or something of that nature to build a huge and deep list, but you really don't.
No.
But how do you look at a return on investment when you're looking to maybe buy into something?
Right. And when I was younger, I made a lot of mistakes with buying into other people's businesses. And if you don't really have control, you're really kind of hoping that the person is going to go and use the money wisely and continue and stay consistent. And what I've learned over the years is that entrepreneurship is difficult for a lot of people to stay consistent. So I'm much slower to get involved in people's businesses now. The only ones that I've really got involved in the last couple of years is, do I know the owner operator really well? And then do I see that there's a trend in the industry, that there's a real great opportunity for growth? Yes. And then Warren Buffett has like some phrase, it's like you're looking for a moat for the business. Is there something special about this business? For example, last year I invested in my friend Bedros Keuilian's gym software, right? So it's a software for like tracking members and doing that sort of stuff. Now he's already got 800 franchises that he owns in his Fit Body Bootcamp franchise. So we know for sure 800 gyms are going to use that, which means we're going to get data from 800. And then he also coaches many other franchise owners. So then you also know that he's had experience in the past of what doesn't work, and he has a great deal with the programmers because, man, programming, I've done my own apps and stuff like that, and programming costs can go through the roof, and you don't have anything to show for it after a short time. But he actually has contained that cost. So now it's just a simple matter of like, And I know him. I know how dedicated he is to not only improving the people that he leads, but also to improving himself. And he's dedicated to this thing. So that was a no-brainer. Whereas in the past, I would just meet somebody. Oh man, I think that's a great idea, and get involved with them, and it was almost always turned out bad. I'm probably like 1 for 10 on those things. Fortunately, the one that did worked out well.
Yes. And I know, so often people just want to give away a piece of their business, or jump into bed with somebody and just, let's be partners. But when you give away too much of the pie, like really lots of times you just need a who. Like you need somebody on your team. You need a specialist. You need a consultant. And you've used this term with me. It's like, you wouldn't give away your kidney or an arm to someone. It's like you just need you might need a better lender or better access to something. So I think it's an important message, because people do give away too much of the pie too often.
Well, yeah, in most cases, a lot of beginner entrepreneurs will say to me, I'm going to give this person equity to come on. And it's like, no, you're not going to give away equity in your business and to bring somebody on. You're going to find somebody who's a competent professional, and you're going to pay them. And most of the time, people want to bring on a partner because they just don't have the confidence in themselves. And they think the partner is going to come along and fix all the problems. But that never, ever works out. And avoid partnerships as much as you possibly can. There are a few out there that have worked, but most times partnerships end up not only not working out, but going so bad and so sideways and so sour that you end up in a negative position if you had not started the business at all.
Lose money, you've lost that friendship.
Lawsuits, all types of crazy stuff. And so you need to avoid those things as much as possible, and just take a hard look at yourself and just saying, am I chasing a partnership because I just don't have the confidence in myself? And then understand, as you said, great advice, you just need to find somebody, the who, to come in and do the work. And in this day and age of Upwork and Fiverr Premium and all these gig economy people out there, you can get a CFO to do 2 hours of work in your company on Upwork.com. You can get a CFO from Wichita, Kansas for $35 an hour on Upwork.com to do high-level CFO stuff. Great. That's good money for him in Wichita, Kansas, and it serves a purpose for you. And you don't have to go and hire somebody full-time to do that position when you only have a couple hours of work for it. So everything can be found at the gig level, which eliminates the need for you to give away part of your baby because you just don't have the confidence in yourself.
What was the term you used? The gig level?
The gig economy. I mean, that's essentially what it is.
Oh, someone who wants the gig to take on that piece of work you need.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you need a video editor, Upwork. You need a CFO, Upwork. You need a copywriter, Upwork. And then there's specialized sites in each one of those industries to find that. It's just like Angie's List to find a contractor. You don't need to go and hire a full-time contractor when you can find all these people out there who, they just they're piecing together their contract work, and that's up to them. But there's plenty of competent people out there doing that.
Yes. And I mean, you have this filter, I have this filter, but so many people don't have that filter. They just go, oh my gosh, like I got to do it all. When really it's like, no, it's not your job. And just because you can do it, you shouldn't do it. You really should be doing things that, like, the majority of your time in your calendar, it's like your superhero power. This is what you're blessed to do. And I mean, you live life like you're dying, because we really all are. And time is so valuable. We don't get more of it. And the thing that I like about you there, Craig, is you really do balance, like, telling it like it is with implementing real accountability into people's lives, along with compassion, because I don't know about you, but like I'm probably the hardest person on myself, and sometimes we just need to hear someone that's like, hey man, it's gonna be okay.
And you're doing great.
Let's make an action plan. Let's make a little action plan to get through this or whatever. Sometimes we need someone to zoom us up to that 10,000 foot level.
Yeah, exactly. The outside eyes from a coach. It's like your kid's sports coach. I mean, your kids don't know what they're doing wrong until the coach who's watching on the sideline is able to help pinpoint that out and make them a better player or whatever they're doing.
Exactly. Well, turning home here, I wanted to just bring up another indisputable truth that, you'll never go wrong by giving value to others.
Right.
And you've actually recommended this mastermind, like have an offer that, you're actually giving away some of your best things for free. Mm-hmm. And, in this economy, like in a recessionary time, a lot of people are going like scarcity mindset. They're retracting, they're playing defense instead of offense. And maybe you can just speak a little bit about how giving value, maybe it hasn't always been that way, but definitely majority of your career, it's served you really, really well, and just the connections you've made and how that's opened up doors for you. And I'm a big believer of give gifts in advance, because it'll always come back, just a lot of reciprocity. So
yeah, I believe it too. And one of the first things my first coach taught me, almost over 15 years ago, was we want to create something that's really great in order to get somebody's email to grow your email list. And growing my email list by giving away free stuff has essentially made me like 75% of the money I've ever made in my life. Getting people onto an email list and then showing them that they can know, like, and trust me through the free stuff, and eventually making other offers to them. They can give me money for even more value. And that's how I've built the business side of things. But I've also grown this massive network of friends, I would call them, even though I haven't met a lot of them. We have had so many messages back and forth by sending out books. So one of my best friends, Bedros, he and I first met each other by sending each other books in the mail. So I saw what he was doing in the fitness industry. I sent him a book, said, hey, you're gonna like this. He sent me a book back. And the next thing you know, in 6 months, I had joined his mastermind group, but 3 months after that, we had started our first mastermind group together. And then we ran mastermind groups for the next almost 12 years together, we probably made like $250,000 a year running the mastermind. But really it was just for us, a lot of it was just for us to hang out. But we built that relationship.
Do cool things with cool people.
Right, exactly. And we built that relationship through giving gifts to one another. And then all the books that I've written, I send out probably about $2,000 worth of books per year, minimum, sometimes more. And I remember when Ed Milet had a little booklet came out before his big one, I bought 200 copies and sent them out to people and had a little note on the front just to stay on people's radars. And, and sure enough, what happened was somebody sent me a message after I sent out, I probably spent like $2,000 on Ed's books. Somebody sent me a message, said, hey, this reminded me to contact you because I was thinking of getting coaching with you again. And so it just nudged them off the fence, and so it made it all worthwhile. But the books that I've sent out and given away, and I've got the Perfect Day Formula Kit, which is more than just a book, it's gotten me on so many big podcasts. It's led to so many introductions to other people. And I have this little phrase that I shared today in the mastermind, which is everything in life is easier the more good people that you know.
Yes.
And I mean, real estate, that's probably like the truest truth, right? If you want to sell a house, or if you have a problem with renovations,
so many of the best deals don't even hit the market.
Yeah, if you only know 10 people, you're not gonna know who the best plumber is in Toronto. If you know 100 people in the real estate space, you're gonna get 100 different opinions, and you're gonna have a greater chance of finding that great contractor. If you only know 3 people and you want to, like I met my wife by asking one of my friends to introduce me to people. If you only know 3 people and they only know 5 people, you got a pool of 15 people.
Yes.
But if you know 1,000 people and those 1,000 people know 200 people, that's 200,000 people that you're exposed to just through your connections. I mean, how is everything not easier in life? You want to get like a backstage tour at the whatever they call the Sky Dome these days, right? You probably know somebody if you know 1,000 people in the Toronto area. You probably know somebody who has an inside, maybe has some tickets that allow you to take your son to his 6th birthday and give him like this amazing experience. But if you only know 3 people, chances are you're not going to get access to that type of stuff. And I'm an introverted type of person, and I haven't built most of these friendships by going to events and being the loudest person in the room. No, I've built them by sending out books, by sending, by growing my email newsletter, by putting videos on Instagram and YouTube, and speaking at people's events and introducing other people to other good people. And then they introduce more people to me, and that's how it works in such a great way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think they have to be that big social person,
right.
But like for me, I was super introverted. I was like the quiet jock in school, but I found the switch. I know where the switch is. I can turn it on, I can turn it off.
Yeah.
Like after an event, I might be tired. I might just want to be in my own space, in my own head. But I think people need to learn how to turn that switch on and off so they can give more. They can get their message out there in the world.
I think that's a great point. And for the longest time, when I started with video and podcasts and stuff, I wasn't very entertaining, and I had a monotone type of speaking. But over time, you improve it, and you have to look at events as a performance. You have to go in with a game plan. So if you were going to a real estate seminar, you need hey, these are the 3 things I need to learn. These are the 3 people I need to meet. And you just need to be on a mission in there. And if somebody stops you and wants to talk to you, you should just be your best self and help people out. But bring that energy and just go in there as hard as you can, do the best that you can, get everything that you need so you have a successful event. And then make sure that you have planned a day of rest the day after, and not into a regular work week or into something else that's going to be stressful. But look at it just like any type of physical performance. You're going to prepare just like you would for a marathon, do the performance, and then have that recovery after. And that's how you're going to get so much further ahead, by going and having like a 20% effort or something like that.
Yeah, you got to go into every situation, every meeting in life with intention and with your outcomes. And it's important to manage your calendar, be prepared. You know, I prepared for this interview here. I was even interviewing some of your coaches.
Oh, nice.
Of that nature. So, they said that you actually are a pretty funny guy, and you like to drop at least one funny nugget every single day on them. So, but
it's mostly sarcasm where they're not even sure if I'm joking or not.
There you go. You know, what's next for you? Like, what gets you excited these days?
So I'm on a search, and maybe you can help me out here. I obviously like books, so I've written 3 books. And I want to write more books, and I have a lot of ideas, but I don't know what the next book should be. And so you know me, and you know my expertise, and you have a lot of connections out in the world, in the business world, and you know what the business world needs, and you know what high performers need to be more successful. So knowing all that information, what is the next book that I should be writing?
Yeah, well, your one book is kind of like your story of how you overcame what you were going through. I highly recommend
that's Unstoppable
to the audience here as well. And then Perfect Week, Perfect Day. I think that's a great foundation. Everybody needs to own their day. But at this mastermind, I mean, you attract people from all over the world, and you guys have so much great advice. It could just be like next level success for life or for the entrepreneur, right?
Okay.
So I think you can just stack on top of owning the day, owning the week, and it's just like these are other principles to really, be successful in business.
Okay, cool.
You are a very sharp business person, highly productive, very disciplined. So, great example to the world, and super blessed that you can be on the podcast here.
Yeah. So that's what I'm excited about and trying to figure out. Obviously running the business and growing the mastermind, and I've been fortunate, but also worked really hard at getting great coaches in our business, and they outshine me, I think, in some areas of the coaching. And so it's just getting more coaches, getting more coaching clients, expanding these live events, because the live events really change lives. And you've been a part of many of your own live events, other big live events. Getting in person and connecting with somebody, nothing beats it still. As much as I like to brag about how I've grown my network by not being in person, but even an introverted type person will go to an event and have a life-changing experience, provided they're surrounding themselves with good people. So we want to do a lot more of that too.
Very cool. Well, if you're listening to this on YouTube, drop a comment down below. What do you guys think Craig should be writing as far as a topic for his new book, or
I would love that
in the book?
Love it.
Because feedback is much appreciated. We don't know everything. We need to hear from you what you're struggling with. So, Craig, as a final thought here, I know we talked about giving away some of your best material for free. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there something here, or a link or anything that people can maybe get an ebook or something from you?
Yeah,
get some value?
The most important thing that I've ever put together so far is the Perfect Week Formula book. And if you go to Free Perfect Week, get that book. One of our clients that is here, she has this marked up. I've never seen a book so marked up and so worn. She's read it so many times. She has the audio on repeat in her car when she drives to work. It just will help make so much more time in your life, so that you can either put more time into your business if you want, or more time into your family, or more time into your health, because it'll help you stop doing the stuff that doesn't matter and have more time to focus on what matters. It's like the greatest gift that I could give the entire world is more time, because it's the most important thing that you can have. So go to Free Perfect Week. It could be freeperfectweekformula.com, freeperfectweekbook.com. I don't know. We'll get the right link down below.
Just goes to show he's such a great delegator that even he doesn't know the link. But the link will work when you get it. Go binge on it, guys. It is a great book. I was doing 65% of this stuff from years and years of reading Stephen Covey and all these different things, but Craig has put it together in one package that'll change your life. So, Craig, I just want to thank you for your time today.
Hey, man. Awesome. Thank you for coming down here.
No problem. And looking forward to the second half of your event. So let's get to it. Thanks, everybody, for subscribing. If you haven't actually dropped a comment, liked, or subscribed to the channel, please do so now, or else, I don't know, me and Craig are going to track you down and make sure you guys hit that button. So have an amazing day. We'll see you on the next one.